Hi, everybody, and welcome. And we are going to be talking about chapter 2 today. Here we go. Okay, so I want to make sure that you have the learning outcomes. So we're going to be focusing on power to learn, the motivated learner, how to utilize your mindset, learning styles, personality types, applying what you know about learning, and the hidden curriculum. So we're going to get into a little bit more about what that means at the end. So these are some questions to ask yourself. Just like with every chapter, we want to see how you're feeling about these four areas. We want to know if learning is easy for you, if you have preferred learning style, how, if you can't learn something, do you stick with it? Or if you think that teacher is the most significant aspect of your learning. So these are four questions I want you to think about throughout this chapter. Okay. So this chapter is going to talk about different types of learning and your learning practices, how to make informed and effective choices about how you learn, identify what a growth mindset means, evaluate and make informed decisions about how your learning styles and skills that you have about learning, different personality types, what outside circumstances impact you on your learning, and what the hidden curriculum is. Okay, so the first section is the power to learn. Some questions to consider is what actually happens when you learn something? So how do you actually learn? What are the different types of learning? And then do you approach studying differently depending on the outcome? Okay, so learning is all about how you take in information around from the world around you, and how you get new knowledge into your head. And so some concepts that influence how we learn, your attitude. If you're not in a mindset to learn, you're probably not going to learn. And how motivated are you in learning something new? The types of learning, the methods of learning, and then what your preferences are. Okay, so all learning is not the same. This is um, Bloom's taxonomy of different types of learning. So at the very bottom, we have remembering. That's the easiest part of learning. So, for example, what are the planets, right? Mercury, Venus, Earth. You probably learned my very energetic mother just served us nachos to remember all the planets. That's remembering all the planets. Understanding would be like, why is Mercury hotter than Earth? Right? So maybe you learned that, a year or so after. So maybe you learned all the planets in second grade. Maybe in third grade, you started understanding what it means about the different planets and how far away they are from the sun. Then you apply, maybe do some sort of science project in fifth grade where you kind of apply what you've learned and, um, you know, based on information about the different planets. And then you might analyze, like maybe take data and actually do some sort of experiment, right? And analyze the data. Um, and then you evaluate. Maybe you write a research paper on the planets. And then maybe in college, you do some sort of undergraduate thesis or independent research project where you're creating or maybe, researching exoplanets. So they're all about the planets, but you're learning differently. And it has to do with your maturity level too. So the bottom is about basic facts and concepts, where at the top is about producing new original work. Um, you have some examples about musical ability there too, just to give you a different reference point. Um, and so when you're in college, you're going to be transitioning maybe from some high school or middle school, remembering and understanding to more applying, analyzing, and evaluating. So a more complex style of learning is going to be expected of you in college. Okay, so we talked about motivated learners, about how if you're not motivated to learn, you're probably not going to learn, right? So what are the different types of motivation that can affect your learning? We're going to talk about resiliency, which is bouncing back after a failed attempt. So maybe you fail the test. The quicker you are to get over it, is the more resilient you are. So that's bouncing back after a failed attempt. And grit is your ability to persevere through tough times, right? So not necessarily after a bad or a failed attempt. It's just your ability to move through challenges. So both are very important in college because you're going to have to use both of them. We're going to talk about the uses and gratification theory, which is a learning-centered approach, helping you take control of how and what you learned with the end results in mind. So being in college to learn, so it's important to learn something while also getting your degree, which is the end result. It's important that you actually learn while you're in college. You're not just doing it for a grade and for a degree. And so negative bias happens when you focus on the bad part, right? Kind of like if you get a haircut and one person says they don't like it and 100% people think that they love it, you're going to focus on the one person who says that they don't like it, right? Same thing. If you get 95%, you're going to focus on what you got wrong rather than what you got right. And that's just, I think, human nature to have this negative bias. Okay, resilience and grit. People with high grit have better motivation to learn and get tasks done. Okay, so grit is really important to kind of persevere throughout college. And having a good attitude is what helps you have grit. Okay, so grit stands for growth, resilience, instinct, and tenacity. Um, and so grit is more than just resilience, even though it's part of the acronym. So tenacity, persisting, committing to your goals. Instinct, your ability to know what goals are the best for you. Of course, resiliency, um, if you have adversity in your life, how to respond to that. So that's bouncing back. And then growth, for you to continuously get better and to develop and with maturity throughout your experiences. Okay, so how do you get grit? You're like, okay, I want to get through college effectively, but how do I get that? Well, you're going to have grit if you do something that you like, right? If you have a goal to lose weight, but you are not motivated to lose weight, you're probably not going to do it, right? Practice makes perfect. So you want to keep on practicing. Make sure you know why you want to do it and have hope in what you are doing. And if you surround yourself with people who are also setting goals, you're more likely to set goals and achieve them because the bar has been lifted. It's important to surround yourself with people who are also goal-oriented because you're going to rise to the occasion. Okay, the uses and gratification model. So the UGT, or the uses and gratification module, talks about the social and psychological orients of needs. Okay, so it generates needs gratification, other unintended consequences. So this is what it started as, right? But what it really is about is what motivates you to learn something. Okay. How do you know what to choose to make sure that your needs and expectations are met? And so it's really important that you know what motivates you so that you actually will do and be successful in those things, right? You want to make sure that you're choosing the right activities. Okay, combating negative bias. Everyone's going to have, something that happens that's not very good in their academic career. But if you could focus on the positive instead of the negative, that's going to be a lot better. So be aware of what your negative bias is. When you go into a test, focus on what you do know. And then keep track of what you're proud of. Okay, growth mindset and how it affects your learning, and performance goal versus learning goals. Okay, performance goals These are outcome-based or fixed mindset. So, and learning goals are process-based and growth mindset. So we're going to show you this chart that talks about the two different ones. So a fixed mindset means, whatever you're born with is what you're going to have. A growth mindset means you can continue to learn, develop, and grow. Um, a fixed mindset might also say you did something because you're smart. A growth mindset might say you did something successfully because you worked hard at it, right? Um, like this mistakes and failures, a fixed mindset hides or makes excuses for mistakes, and they're very frustrated. Whereas growth mindset takes ownership of mistakes and learns from failure, right? So it's really important that you have a growth mindset in college. And so if you do fail, you learn from that mistake and don't blame someone else. Okay, learning styles. What are the learning styles out there? These are the top ones: visual, oral, or kinesthetic. Um, there's also read write, but these are the three main ones. So it's important to know what type of learner you are for how you can study. So if you're a visual person, you definitely want to maybe doodle or have images to kind of trick your brain into learning things. Oral, you might want to listen to an audiobook or a lecture from an instructor to teach you something. And kinesthetic is learning by doing, like getting involved with the lab, doing something hands-on to learn. So it's important for you to know what kind of learner you are. If you just search, VARK test, VARK, and R stands for read write, you'll be able to take a little assessment to know which kind of learner you are. And it's important to study the way that you learn. The problem with relying on learning styles comes from thinking that just one defines your needs, which is untrue. You need multiple types of learning because not all faculty members are going to teach you the same way. So it's important to be able to learn orally, like if it's a lecture, or kinesthetic if you're in a lab, or visual if you're in an art class. You need to learn how to learn in different aspects because you're not going to be taught the same way. Okay, so it's important to know how to do all of them. Okay, and you might be thinking, well, what about students with disabilities? Um, awareness is the most important thing. If you know if you have a disability, then you go to student accessibility services for assistance. There are a couple different laws that help with students who need extra accommodations, and we have them all here at UCF. So for example, if you need recordings of class lectures, text readers, extra time, things like that, it's important that you let the university know, specifically student accessibility services, if you do need extra time. Okay, 2.5 is about personality types in learning. If you've ever taken the Myers-Briggs test, there's all sorts of freebie ones out there if you want to take it. It will tell you about your leadership personality and your learning personality. And so these are the different types. So you might have heard the term before, extroversion versus introversion. That's how you gain energy. Do you gain energy by being around other people? Then you're extroverted. If you gain energy by being solo and alone, then that's introverted energy. I'd like to think about it as an ATM card. If you go to a party and gain energy and you're ready for the post party, after the party, you're an extrovert. If you go to a party and it totally drains you, your ATM card decreases in dollar amount, then you're introverted, right? So either gain or lose energy. Intuition is how you arrive at conclusions. So you either use your gut, your intuition, or your senses, right? Think you're a feeler, how you make decisions. I like to say either use your head or your heart to make decisions. So if you ever had to break up with somebody and you wrote out a pro-con list, you're probably a thinker. If you went with how your heart, you know, felt, then you are a feeler. And then opinions, judging versus perceiving. Um, if you are a very organized person and that's how you form opinions, you're probably a judger. If you kind of fly by the seat of your pants when making decisions or when you're making opinions, then you're a perceiver. These are the different combinations. So you're one of these 16. Okay, so your personality type can help you understand your learning style a little bit more too. Okay, so hopefully your major or what you're learning at the university fits your personality type and your learning style. Okay, so how to make decisions about your own learning. You want to make mistakes safe. Practice quizzes are a great way to do that. Flashcards. You want to be able to um, relate what you're doing to your occupation so it brings you meaning. You want to be able to manage your time and see instructors as learning partners, not just like these scary people out there who give you grades. We're helping you in your learning adventures. Okay, last is the hidden curriculum. So we're going to talk about what is the hidden or invisible curriculum and how you can work with it to prevent negative results. Okay, so there's a lot that is not said when an instructor is saying information to a class. Um, Everything that they say is a learning opportunity. So in large classes, you might miss information. The instructor might just say something and not like explain it. But it's important if you have your own discussion groups or study groups, you'll be able to see what's missing. So the instructor might just scratch the surface on something, but you probably need to go deeper down in an essay question. So it's important to kind of understand not just what the instructor says, but kind of go deeper. So that's the hidden curriculum. Okay, these are the 4 statements that I said before. Hopefully you've kind of thought about this a little bit if you have a preferred learning style and what you think about learning. And that is it for chapter 2. Okay, hope you have a great rest of the day. Stay safe tomorrow, and I'll see you on Friday with chapter 3.